After battling cancer for 3.5 years, Phil Bishop knew she was in dire need of a blood transfusion last Thursday. But for Phil and husband Tom, sickness was compounded by frustration when she tried to get into the Mater Hospital.
One of the executive doctors over there rang me at home at 2 o'clock on Thursday saying, "Very sorry, Mr. Bishop, there's just no bed for you."
Mrs. Bishop had to wait until the next day to be treated, and even then in a day ward. She says it's ridiculous that she was turned away when there are empty wards in the Mater waiting for refurbishment, and that kind of irony just adds to a patient's worry.
I get upset, I get irritated, I get on the verge of tears, and none of this can be any good for anybody's system.
Hunter Area Health Service Administrator Tim Smythe says with the onset of winter, both the Mater and John Hunter hospitals have been full over the past week. But he says a survey in May shows 107 valuable acute care beds have been tied up in the Hunter by patients in need of hostel or nursing home facilities.
So that if we could increase the amount of nursing home beds and aged care hostel beds across the area health service to release 107 beds for acute care patients.
Dr Smythe says he's sorry about the Phil Bishop case, but Mr Bishop is not interested in apologies.
That if my wife had actually died, a wreath would be more appropriate rather than a letter. I said, a bit late in the piece apologising that, I said.
Debbie White and Jackie were reunited at John Hunter's prenatal wing this morning. Mrs White is expecting a baby any day now. The disappearance of guide dog Jackie just added to her worries.
At first I just thought that, she's done the Harry Dash and she'll be back, because sometimes they do get a bit fretty. So I just thought I'd just find her in a couple of hours, or she'd turn up at somebody's place that knows her.
But public appeals for information on Jackie's whereabouts were answered late last night when she wandered into the Mater Hospital at Waratah. Staff quickly realised this was no ordinary stray, it was the dog everyone was looking for. Guide dogs are a special breed, and Jackie had been to hospitals with her mistress in the past. Was it just coincidence that Jackie turned up at a hospital, or was there something more? Debbie White has her own theory.
Food. Anywhere where there's food they'll go to, especially at 9 o'clock at night. I don't really think that she went to a specific, sort of said, "Oh, I'm going to go to the hospital."
In the end, only Jackie really knows the answer. Hospital staff say she can remain by her mistress's side for the duration of her stay. Debbie White says the incident hasn't shaken her confidence in Jackie one jot.
I can trust Jackie no matter where I go.
The buses standing idle at the depot means shoppers are sitting at home hanging on to their money. According to Frank Baxter from David Jones, studies have shown business in the mall falls away by up to 15% during a bus strike.
We are in tough times, and it's not helping the retailers.
While the shop owners won't comment on the politics of the strike, they're frustrated that the issue is taking so long to get resolved. The only businesses without complaint, taxis, running a booming trade. How much would you say it was up this morning?
Oh, probably 30 to 40% better.
State Transit says the buses should be back on the road tomorrow morning, first shift around 4 a.m. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Tough times for the Falcons. They have lost 6 of their last 7. The pressure starting to show. As Newcastle crashed to the Bullets, the normally mild-mannered Wisman went off like a bomb.
We're not happy with the officiating that we've been getting, and we're making that known to the league in every way that we can. We're not going to point fingers at referees and say things publicly to incur fines or whatever, but we are going through the proper channels that the league has and making our feelings known emphatically.
Newcastle's dropped to 10th spot on the NBL ladder. This week the Falcons take on last-placed Hobart and it's crunch time. But there again, the Falcons are losing their height. Terry Dozier still in doubt with a back injury. Neil Turner's now got the flu and hasn't been able to train. But about that at least, Tom Wisman's retained his sense of humour.
Could have been that the little guys maybe caught the flu.
But there is some good news. Captain Al Green notches up his 300th NBL game this weekend. That's 12 years. He spent 10 with Adelaide. Cause for celebration? Well, one thing will make it perfect.
Once they announce it, it'd be great to get on the court and say, well, I stepped foot on court for work another day. It's a big milestone in my career for 300 games, but the win, that's more important. I think I would be celebrating very well my 300 game with a W behind it.
Just 3 years ago, Carol Barrett was an average suburban housewife, but an invitation to see a night's football match changed her life. It took just one hit and Carol was hooked. Since the 1990 season, she's been to every night's Winfield Cup game. That's home and away.
We just live for football. We live for day to day, like to go to the game. That's it. Everyone knows that if they invite us to anything when the game's on, we just don't go. This is my jersey with all my signatures.
Right, that's very special.
Yeah, that's my pride and joy.
Right.
This is my favourite because my husband had it embossed for me. Got a copy done of it. I'm cheap.
Yeah.
Off the right. Number 6. Could be. On the inside, Hagan. Hagan gives it to Gordon, and Gordon's going to score under the post. Yes. Again, Mark Sargent with it.
Almost 400 truckloads of sorghum have been brought into Newcastle from Moree, Gunnedah and Quirindi. GrainCorp has sold a 15,000 tonne shipment to the Japanese. Another 30,000 tonne deal is in the making. The sorghum will be used as cattle feed. It's the first shipment of the grain out of the port since 1983. GrainCorp mainly deals in wheat. Newcastle's GrainCorp normally exports about 1 million tonnes of wheat each year. This year, with drought and reduced plantings, that figure is just 150,000 tonnes. So the deal with the sorghum comes as a real shot in the arm.
Well, we carry a workforce of 44 people here. Clearly, if you're in a year where you're only looking at 20% of your normal export capacity, any form of revenue is welcome.
Sorghum is planted in March or April, much later than wheat, so it was unaffected by the desperate dry times last year. GrainCorp expects the Japanese order to leave the port next week.
Like everyone else, Shortland Electricity is budgeting for hard times in the coming financial year. The authority has tried to relieve the pressures of the recession for the hard-hit hunter industries by announcing a 3% decrease in non-domestic tariffs, and the industrial tariff remains the same.
In this year's budget, there is a greater need to assist industry to try and promote employment, and particularly employment for the young. We're hoping that industry will pick up the challenge and reinvest some of those savings.
The tariff cut has been applauded by industry groups.
To reduce tariffs at this time, when we're in the middle of a big recession, will be substantial benefits to small business in particular.
Hunter households can expect no such gifts. Domestic and off-peak tariffs go up by 2.6%. Pensioner rebates increase by the same amount.
When you look at the domestic increase of 2.6 as opposed to Treasury forecast for inflation increases of 4.2, it is a reduction in real terms.
But community welfare groups say any tariff increase will only make life harder for those who already cannot make ends meet.
Last month we paid out over $5,000 in payments for creditors. That's things like electricity bills. Obviously with something like a 2.6% increase, those people that are coming to us who can't afford to pay the bills will be stretched 2.6% more.
Australian Poisons Watch today called on Council to stop spraying Roundup and adopt alternative strategies. A recently released US report containing information about Roundup from researchers all over the world has sparked their concern. The group argues all components of Roundup must be fully tested in Australia before the use of the herbicide continues. But at this stage, the protesters say Australian authorities appear satisfied with basic overseas tests.
It's a pass-the-buck system where they take their information from the National Health and Medical Research Council, but as we don't have testing facilities for most of these things here in Australia, we just rubber stamp them, and then when we get the information, the given scientific proof that the product is wrong, we're light years behind.
"2 years in the making, the new Foster High School is ready for business. School was out today for the students while teachers and ancillary staff finished packing up, leaving the classrooms they've occupied since 1978.
Now that it's nearly over and we're nearly settled in, they're pleased that it's over. It was getting a little bit tight at the other school.
At a cost of $10 million, the new buildings will house the ever-increasing number of students in the area. It will be business as usual come the beginning of the new term.
We made the move now to give us a chance to settle in, so that after a week of shakedown next week, all smooth sailing next term.
With the old high school now vacated, the local primary school is expected to move in around 6 months' time.
The original Wallace Lake Fishermen's Cooperative opened in 1946, servicing the catchings of a few local fishermen. Public demand, especially among the growing tourist population, called for larger facilities. On Saturday, that became a reality.
I wish you well in your new venture, and it now gives me great pleasure to declare the new Wallace Lake Cooperative shop open.
The cooperative now has around 120 members, their catchment area stretching from Seal Rocks in the south and north to Crowdy Head.
Fishing and oyster farming is our biggest industry and we must look after it.
The cooperative, completely built from Australian materials, offers everything for the seafood lover and now features cooked as well as fresh fish. And from initial samplings, the offerings, it seems, were well accepted. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Waratari Old Bar's size made life difficult for United, and combined with their pace at the halves stretched Taree. Gary Matheson setting up this barging try to Bob Maher. But United weren't going to lie down, and captain coach Chris Cordner, with a giant cutout pass, got his side well back in the match, but briefly. Then enter Man Mountain Dennis Bungie, and with a run reminiscent of the night's Mark Sargent, Barnes stormed his way to a solid try right under the black dot, and Old Bar were home in a canter.
Around 50 protesters from the North East Forest Alliance began organising their blockade today in a bid to stop the Forestry Commission logging the area. The group's first priority, to set up camp. However, this had a hitch. Several containers of Harpic cleanser had been placed in the campsite's water tank, leaving the protesters without a ready supply of drinking water. The Forestry Commission's logging timetable of the old-growth Mummel Gulf area is uncertain at the moment, but a spokesman for the North East Forest Alliance says the blockade is ready for action when required and will maintain their stance until a proper assessment of the area's old-growth forests is completed.
We'll be maintaining the blockade until proper assessment of the old-growth forest of Walker has been done. We are here to ensure that happens, and we are attempting to do it ourselves if the Forestry Commission will not do so.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News. A touch of nationalism to welcome the Governor of New South Wales, the Rear Admiral and Mr Sinclair, plus other dignitaries. The reception attended by young and old, past and present students. With a commemorative plaque unveiled, on to the vital ingredients of a special birthday celebration. The oldest ex and youngest current students uniting to cut the cake. And then the grand finale, 100 balloons released from a human 100 formation. And almost as impressive, the 430 happy faces below. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Newcastle City Council called a meeting last night to gauge the public's ideas on how our bicentenary of European arrival in Newcastle should be celebrated. Among the suggestions, to extend Newcastle Region Art Gallery, build sculptures around the city, including Fort Scratchley, and develop a high-class maritime museum. Regional historian Cynthia Hunter also suggested that Nobby's Island, once a steep isolated landmark, be recreated.
Could take the form of a plastic-wrapped or the flying of balloons in a certain formation to give that profile, or a nighttime event which would involve using laser lights.
Using the launch of the Newcastle foreshore during Australia's bicentenary as an example, there was also a push that our local birthday be the catalyst for upgrading the Stockton foreshore, making it a permanent tribute to the suburb's maritime history. The meeting also supported a year-long celebration involving the entire region.
When Shortland came into this area in 1797, he discovered the river and he discovered coal. It's not really Newcastle that's celebrating its 200 years, it's the valley, it's the Hunter River, and it's the presence of coal here.
But who's going to pay for all this? Lord Mayor John McNaughton says City Council will set aside some money. Funding will also be sought from state and federal governments. All suggestions from the meeting are now being tabulated. There'll be further meetings to fine-tune events and costs. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Trains are running by the university, but they've still got nowhere to stop. $2.5 million was allocated by the federal government to build the Warrabrook station, but no money was set aside to get the student passengers from the platform to the campus, an 8-minute walk away.
Decisions were made last year to have the railway station built, so we don't understand what's going on here.
University Vice-Chancellor Keith Morgan admits they need $600,000 plus to build roads, set up lighting and footpaths, but he says he's looking into it.
Nobody has any guarantees about anything in this life, but there are opportunities to discuss matters and there are solutions that are going to be sought.
State Rail says it won't build a white elephant. Discussions are continuing. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
After blue-green algae threatened to strangle the Darling River system last summer, the state government established a task force to tackle the problem. Representatives of that task force are taking part in a 2-day conference at Narrabri. Chairman John Vernhoven says they're due to report to the Minister in early August.
One very important input is from forums and workshops such as this one.
John Vernhoven believes the problems experienced with blue-green algae last season could be repeated next summer, but he believes local authorities will be better prepared to deal with the algal bloom.
But if a community is affected by an algal bloom, then we can either say this is how you treat the water or these are alternative water supplies. And the community, I think, is now far more algal alert, as it were, to the problems and how they themselves can manage the problems.
Bevan O'Regan this morning faxed his request for a 649 inquiry under oath to Jerry Peacock's office. He says this inquiry will bring all the skeletons out of the closet and clear up the internal strife that's been occurring within the council for the past 5 months.
I believe that it's time that we got right down to the nitty-gritty, and I believe that we've been fiddling at the edges for far too long.
But his fellow councillors have different ideas.
I believe it is time that the Shire President and his men come up with sufficient evidence or reason to justify the pain, the confusion and the cost to the community.
With the results of the recent police inquiry still not known, Councillor Ken Bailey wants the mess in council cleared up as soon as possible, even if it means replacing council staff.
Really it is the people that have to correct this situation with the council. We can only just go from there, and hopefully a dismissal and election will straighten it out.
With added cost being a concern to ratepayers, Councillor O'Regan denies the bill will be footed by the community, with the 649 superseding existing inquiries.
I believe that the 212 inquiry should be superseded by this new inquiry. I certainly hope all councillors will support me on this issue, because I believe if anyone hasn't got anything to hide, they shouldn't be worried about a full inquiry.
The opening of this first ever purpose-built facility for Skillshare at the corner of Bushland and Canangra Drives is less than 2 months away. It's a brave move by Skillshare. The building is privately funded to the tune of $500,000 because the government will not provide money for such capital works, even though it does for other educational organisations.
We're out to show that Taree can do it, and that
Skillshares in general are heading the way of self-sufficiency so that they can fund themselves and not rely on the community and government support.
The building itself is quite remarkable. While the slab floor is conventional, from there on it's different, with the concrete walls being poured on site, then tilted 90 degrees into place. Eventually it will house facilities for computer training, short order cooking and catering, retailing and small business management. Coordinator John Duffy says the investment is proof that Skillshare is here for the long haul.
Providing a much better facility for the local community, we should be able to turn out a much better employee.
Community policing has been a successful initiative in Newcastle. That concept has been given mobility with the donation of a caravan from Shortland Electricity. The van will be used as a roving police station.
This is a way, as I say, that we can actually get out to the people rather than have them rely on them coming to us or contacting us. You know how easy this is yourself. Convenience stores, well, this will be a convenience caravan.
It will also be used as a command centre in the event of a disaster.
We'll also use it where we've had a serious crime occurred in a particular area where we need information from the public, and we want to keep reminding the public of that we function on their information.
The role that the media and the public can play in solving crimes was highlighted today. NBN News journalist Tom Hilston, together with other local media and citizens, received police citations. The news stories prompted a large response from the public, and this led police to charge a hit-and-run driver. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
More than 2 years after the earthquake and the club's destruction, the workers was once again the focus of attention. Rather than tragedy, there was celebration and spotlight beams in the air for the club's gala reopening. A sister city delegation from Ube in Japan found the city at its best and traded customs. Dignitaries disembarking from a fleet of limos were greeted by crowds lining King Street. Singer Daryl Braithwaite won hearts young and old. Band music and pom-pom girls whipped up enthusiasm for the arrival of the Prime Minister and his wife Anita. Off through oppressive admirers to a cocktail reception and an introduction to some of Newcastle's first ladies. The auditorium was set for a gala concert, but not before the Lord Mayor of Newcastle, Alderman John McNaughton, got precipitous.
We are proud of what we have achieved. The economic, social, psychological and physical impact of today's events on the central business area of this city and indeed the region is of very, very great significance.
Opening the club, Mr Keating paid tribute to those who'd come through the quake and the 13 who didn't, 9 of who died when the former building caved in.
It didn't take an earthquake to bring out the best in the people of the Hunter. They've been through, as we all know, great trials before. The tragic events of December 1989 served only again to demonstrate that fact. And I have very much pride and a great deal of pleasure in declaring officially open the new Newcastle Workers Club. Thank you once again.
There was only one small blot on the proceedings. It was late in the evening when the Prime Minister was preparing to leave. It's alleged a man lunged from the crowd and hurled an egg. It hit Mr Keating in the chest, but didn't break until it hit the ground. A 35-year-old Waratah man has been charged with assault and has been bailed to appear in Newcastle local court in a fortnight. The club's licence for 25,000 members is already fully subscribed. Thousands of memberships were renewed when the club was nothing more than a demolition site.
I mean, the loyalty of the membership of this club is just unbelievable. They just keep bouncing back.
Ruth Butler was playing the pokies when the quake hit.
I think I was one of the first to get rescued. I was banging an ashtray and Wayne and Dean sang out, "Whoever's that banging the ashtray, keep banging it." So I did. And then next thing, they were all around me.
Jay Crocker, Emrius and Periat, Antonia Clark, Pat Lebs, Britt Lovelace, Dwayne Sittner and Barry Dyer had their first taste of life in the saddle down under in Grafton today on horses from the North Coast, and in their first match performed well. Grafton won the encounter 18 goals to 12. The USA team got a dreadful start but fought their way back into contention. The US team will play further matches at Coffs Harbour next weekend and Maxville in a fortnight. In Taree today, the second round of the State Indoor Cricket League for the Northern Division, with St Mary's handing Thornley a thrashing, while in this match, Maitland went down to North Coast 100 to 61. North Coast meets St Mary's tomorrow, and the Northern winner will play the Southern Division winner for the title of State Overall Champion later on. The Eastern States Championships are mainly contested in the men's and women's under-20 divisions, but this year an open mixed competition has been thrown in for good measure, and it is surprising the coordination and ability of the mixed teams. This year the event has been expanded to include sides from the Northern Territory, the Australian Capital Territory, and also teams from the Australian Defence Forces. 3 rounds were played today in the mixed and women's under-20 divisions, and 4 rounds in the men's division. New South Wales fielded a strong combination in the mixed and had too many guns for the Defence Forces, this smart try setting up a win. Queensland, as we know, have been on top of the tree in league circles in recent times, and the under-20 women showed just how touch football should be played. They ran in try after try to trounce the ACT. In the men's, Queensland were also on the rampage against the Northern Territory side, with plenty of pace, and the New South Wales men's under-20 team was again too powerful for the Defence Forces team. The finals of the Eastern States Championship from 11 a.m. tomorrow morning.